Good morning. It is Wednesday, April the 13th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the daily declaration for spiritual warfare, the Star-Spangled Banner, and the Pledge of Allegiance, we will have no free lunch, what kids do, and Halloween from the book My Bicentennial Year. All that and more when I come back. Thank you. And now the daily declaration for spiritual warfare for April the 13th. I have loosed you from satanic and demonic conspiracies. My child, remember my great goodness, which I have laid up for those who fear me. If you will keep your trust in me, my goodness will be yours in the presence of the sons of men. I will hide you in the secret place of my presence, and will keep you hidden from the evil plots of wicked men. You will be loosed from any evil demonic conspiracies that the enemy has plotted against you. I have hidden you from their secret plots and from the rebellion of the workers of iniquity, who sharpen their tongues like swords and bend their bows to shoot arrows of bitter words at the blameless. I have preserved your life from the fear of the enemy's secret plots. Psalms 31, verses 19 through 20, Psalm 64, verse 2 through 4, prayer declaration. Hear my voice, O God, in my meditation. Preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Hide me from the secret plots of the wicked and from the rebellion of the workers of iniquity. Though they talk secretly of laying snares for me and believe they have perfected a shrewd scheme, you will make them stumble over their own tongues, and all who see them will flee far from them. I shall declare your wonderful works. Amen. And that was the daily declaration for spiritual warfare for April the 13th. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He is religious and realistic. He is the person that understands that culture is the foundation for politics. He acknowledges a benevolent universe. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential. not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Thank you, thank you. What is the true conservative strategy for defeating socialists in this country? Number one, we must properly define conservatism. Then we must organize all potential conservatives under that definition. Once organized, we must dominate American culture. Dominating American culture means that we must rid ourselves of all the various cults the left has foisted upon us in this country. We rid ourselves of the left-wing cults by promoting value. What are the universal values? Number one, life. Number two, privacy. Number three, time. Number four, sanity. Number five, productivity. We defeat promiscuity by promoting family and privacy. Socialists must be driven from positions of power. And since it is lefty counterculture that provides the foundation for their political success, true conservatives must resist left-wing counterculture and promote normal American culture. By changing our culture, we will change our politics. And we change the culture by getting married, creating a family, and raising our children. Thank you, thank you. What are the tactics in support of the strategy to rid America of socialist influence? The long-term tactics are to be a true conservative, talk like a conservative, act like a conservative, dress like a conservative, think like a conservative. The short-term tactics are rhetorical. True conservatives need to win all of the arguments. True conservatives need to defeat the useful idiots on the left that populate their households, workplaces, and churches. That means don't be neutral. Don't try to prove a negative. Don't take their word for it, and ask lots of questions. The useful idiots are the people that simply repeat the latest talking points. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative political priorities? Number one, a constitutional amendment banning abortion throughout the country. Number two, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Number three, the immediate decertification of all public employee unions. Number four, the immediate assignment of criminal and civil liability to all government regulators. Number five, the immediate repeal of the so-called Patriot Act. Number six, the immediate repeal of all dictator laws. Number seven, the reinstatement of writs of outlawry. Number eight, government-sponsored recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. Number nine, a flexible minimum wage. Number 10, means-tested health care. And number 11, the immediate and permanent prohibition of investment banking by any office holder. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Number one, bring back not-for-profit news. Number two, defeat the cult of promiscuity with the promotion of privacy. Number three, defeat the cult of neutrality with the effective use of propaganda. Number four, defeat the cult of personality by emphasizing character. Number five, defeat the cult of imagination, psychology, and Hollywood with religion and research. Number six, defeat the cult of reinvention by admitting one's mistakes. Number seven, defeat the cult of death, abortion, infanticide, and assisted suicide. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. The biggest mistakes that right-wing talk show hosts make. Number 1, they fail to consult their consciences. Number 2, they fail to listen to their own shows. Number 3, they aid and abet the left. Number 4, they demoralize their audiences. Number 5, they contradict themselves. Thank you. Left-wing, right-wing vocabulary. The left says, going forward. The right says, from now on. The left says, homeless. The right says, squatter. The left says, migrant. The right says, fugitive. The left says, eliminate. The right says, reduce. Thank you. And now, there's no free lunch. Quote, how selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. Unquote. Adam Smith. The simplistic notion that self-interest is only monetary, only materialistic, only crass, only opulent, it helps feed a narrative that is useful to the cause of class envy, but it ignores the complexity of human nature and the basic fact of those who take pleasure in serving their fellow mankind. Those with such an altruistic intuition, informed by moral conscience and obedience, possess every right to pursue their own material betterment in their pursuits. But for commentators on the drivers of enterprise to assume a pedestrian view of human objective is convenient, dishonest, and ideological. The study of human action shows ample capacity for pleasure derived from service. And that was, there's no free lunch. Thank you. And now, this is going to be the second part of Chapter 2 of the book, The Collapse of Parenting. And we're in the second of 3 factors that have driven the rise in obesity and overweight and the decline in fitness among children. We covered what kids eat, and then there is also what kids do and how much kids sleep. And so today we will cover what kids do. American kids today are substantially less active compared with their counterparts 30 or 40 years ago. The most common leisure activity of American kids in 1965 was outdoor play. American kids today are more likely to be sitting in front of a TV or computer screen. In 1965, according to one study, the typical American spent 92 minutes a day watching TV, which works out to about 10 and a half hours a week. Even more importantly, in 1965, more than 80% of American households with a TV had just one TV set, which meant that the parents and children were watching TV together. There were only 3 nationally broadcast television channels in 1965: ABC, CBS, and NBC. Cable television did not exist. There was no Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, not even MTV. In the late 1960s and early 70s, daytime television meant soap operas such as the World Turns, Love is a Many-Splendored Thing, and General Hospital. Not the sort of thing that kids want to watch. According to the latest nationwide survey, the average 9-year-old American child now spends more than 50 hours per week in front of an electronic screen, which includes TV, computer screens, and cell phones. The average American teenager now spends more than 70 hours per week in front of a screen. When I was growing up in Ohio in the 60s and 70s, most of the kids on my block, and definitely all the boys, spent their free time outdoors. We came inside for meals, but that was pretty much it. Our backyard was so worn down from our baseball games that 3 years after the last of us had moved away, you could still see where the pitcher's mound and the bases had been. Not long ago, a mother I know told her 11-year-old son, "It's such a beautiful day. Why don't you play outside?" He answered in all seriousness, But where would I plug in my Xbox? American children have less free time for play than they used to, and the play is more likely to be organized and supervised by grown-ups. But the biggest change is simply that American kids today would prefer to play with an electronic device rather than go outside to play hopscotch or dodgeball or jump rope. Many school districts have even banned some traditional American games, such as dodgeball, because of liability considerations and because of the belief that such games promote bullying and because of the concerns that such games might lower a child's self-esteem. Turn off the screens, get your kids outdoors, go outside and play with them. If your children are within walking distance of their school and you live in a safe neighborhood, why not ask them to walk to school? In 1969, 41% of American kids either walked or rode their bikes to school. By 2001, that proportion had dropped to 13%. If there's a grocery store within a mile of your home, then take a daily or every other day walk to the store with your child and carry a bag home. And I suppose all that's going to help, but the key here in this particular section, many school districts have even banned some traditional American games such as dodgeball because of liability considerations and because of the belief that such games promote bullying and that they might lower a child's self-esteem. So that's why the kids are spending more time in front of a screen, because whatever it is they're doing on the screen isn't going to upset the left in this country. And so, of course, they're not going to be doing as much outside as they should be, and they're going to be less fit. And that was what kids do. Next time, how much kids sleep. And that's from the book, The Collapse of Parenting, How We Hurt Our Children When We Treat Them Like Adults. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. And now, Tales from My Bicentennial Year. It's a book about a family growing up in 1975, Gansevoort, New York, which is in the Adirondacks. And last time we had covered chapter 12, and which was the chapter about him becoming an acolyte or altar boy, and he was on his own for the first time doing altar boy services on Sunday, and everything was going smooth until one of the candles went out. He lit the candle, put the hot match back in the box, and ended up catching the linen on fire, and so there was a mini conflagration there, and for which Mike was very, very embarrassed. So this is chapter 13, Happy Halloween. For the first time in our short lives, Halloween was on a Friday night. This fact, I believe, made it possible for the moms to let us go by ourselves and then sleep over at Huge Jean's and Brad's house. On Thursday night, we went to carve our pumpkins. My pumpkin had some issues. While it had survived the last few weeks outside on our porch, suffering the heat of the day and the hard frosts at night, it had also been bumped down the stairs of the porch when our dog, Ted, ran into it. It was still okay on the bottom, but the top stem and circle part you would normally cut were pushed in and the stem was sideways instead of up and down. My mom had a great idea. We would make a wounded pumpkin. She cut an ordinary jack-o'-lantern face on the front, which still had pretty good room left on top. Then she left the rest of the pumpkin in place and stuck one of my plastic pirate swords in the back so that the end of the sword came out the top of the head over the eyes. It actually looked pretty cool. So we took our pumpkins outside and placed them on the porch. My pops scampered around looking for candles until he found 5 of them, 1 for each pumpkin. He placed the candles inside each pumpkin and lit them. My mom made us stand behind the pumpkins while she took a picture. Taking pictures was not even close to what it is today. She had a Polaroid camera. When you took a picture, it would flash and then make a loud whirling noise. And when it did not jam up, a picture spit out the bottom. The cool part was watching the picture develop. It would come out all black, like nothing was on it except blackness. And then, after a few seconds, you watched it transform into a picture. You would start to make out the bodies, and then the faces, and then you watched it come into focus. Then you had a picture. If you ever get to see this particular picture, you will see just the 5 glowing pumpkins and nothing else. No kids, no dog, just the pumpkins. I never said the Polaroid took good pictures. The night before Halloween was also known as Cabbage Night in our little town. This was a night when the local juvenile riffraff would toilet paper the town, soap windows, throw rotten tomatoes around, smash pumpkins, and other such things. My big fear was that the Fritters, Gansevoort's local crew of misfits, would come down to our street and smash my pumpkin. In the past few years, the 4th Street gang was absolutely forbidden to go out on this night. This year, for some strange reason, I still think it had to do with Halloween being on a Friday night, we were allowed out after the pumpkins were cut. We were finished around 6 with the pumpkins, and my dad said, okay, you can go out, but you need to be back here at 7:30 or earlier, no later. And I'm telling you now, you better not do anything stupid or illegal or whatever. No mischief. You understand? Yes, I replied. As soon as I was free, I ran directly down to Jean and Brad's. I saw Mike C. running down the street after me, and here came Russ walking across the street. I waited at the end of the Tidwell's driveway for them, and then we all knocked on the door and got them out. We walked down to the end of the street towards Cobar Road and wondered what you are supposed to do on Cabbage Night. We had all been warned in no uncertain terms not to cause any mischief. So the discussion evolved into what we felt we could get away with in the hour of fun we had left. Mysteriously, all of us were given the same curfew of 7:30. We debated some more about what type of fun we could have and get away with. It was decided that we might as well go harass the 3rd Streeters. Heck, they were probably on their way through the backyards to harass us. We tossed around several ideas. Huge Gene wanted to kidnap Bobby Dolan, tie him up, and leave him in the middle of the road. Fun, of course, but the trouble meter rating on this scheme was off the charts. Mike C. suggested a garden raid for old vegetables and stuff, and then we would go on to 2nd Street and pummel some homes, especially the White House on the corner, where the old lady yelled at us for cutting through her yard. This idea had potential. There were plenty of gardens. 2nd Street was far enough away that the 2nd Street parents would probably blame the 3rd Streeters anyway. It was also good because on 2nd Street, our parents couldn't see or hear us. This idea kicked around for a bit, but couldn't garner significant support. Back in a minute. Thank you. Russ spoke up with his idea. Carjacking. Carjacking to us meant to have 2 kids, one on each side of the road, directly across from each other, and when a car got close enough to see you with their headlights, you both bent down and acted like you were pulling up a rope or chain or something across the road. We didn't actually have a rope or chain, but to the driver it would surely give the impression something was being pulled up in front of them. The driver, not knowing what was going on, would have to stop. If he didn't, it might damage his car. Or if it was a chain or whatever and he kept going, it would suck us right into his car. Okay, Russ, said Huge Gene. Where should we do it, and what do we do when he stops? Russ thought about this for a second and said, we do it at the top of the hill on Cobar Road, so that when he does stop, we can just run into the pasture and then the woods. From there, we could circle back to our houses. You could have the other guys laying in the ditch, And then when the car stopped and the driver started yelling, you could pelt him with rotten tomatoes. This idea kicked around some more, and on the trouble meter, on the scale of 0 being no trouble and of 10 being a lot of trouble, this rated about a 20. The gang discussed these options and some others for a little longer. It was then discovered that it was already 6:45 p.m. We had not done anything yet besides sit under the street lamp at the corner and talk about what we were going to do. We were wasting time. We only had 45 minutes left to cause mayhem. We quickly decided to go with Mike C's idea. We all started running up Cobar Road towards 2nd Street. Upon arrival there, it was discovered that we had no ammo. We backtracked a little bit. Brad noticed that Bill, the mayor's vegetable field, was right over there. All we had to do was cross that barbed wire fence, grab some stuff, and we were off. Then we would be able to go between the backyards of 3rd Street and work our way up to 2nd Street. Brad kept going with the plan. And once we come down 2nd Street, firing all the way down, we jump and run back into the woods at the end of the street, run through to the sand pit, and make an easy escape to our street. He was all excited, and we all agreed. Now we had to get the ammo. We jumped off Cobar Road and into the big ditch to get to the vegetable patch on the other side. The ditch was mushy and muddy, making for a hard climb out. But muddy as we were, we made it to the top. We made it to the barbed wire fence. The standard barbed wire fence had 3 rows of wire with little spikes of twisted wire pointing out every 6 inches or so. The posts were round pieces of wood and were probably 10 feet or so apart, with the 3 rows of wire stapled on them, top to bottom. This area of the fence had 4 rows, and the bottom row was only 6 inches or so from the ground, and had no twisted spikes of wire on it. It was a straight clear wire, and on each post had a little white cylinder on the wire hooked into the post. The easiest way to hop a barbed wire fence was pretty simple. You put one hand on the top wire in between the twisted spikes, then the other hand on the top of the fence post. You took your foot and put it in on the second row of wires and jumped over. Simple Simon. Within minutes, we were all over the fence. The spot Brad picked to raid the gardens was ideal. There were old tomatoes, old rotten cucumbers, and old something else that really smelled gross. It was perfect. We each loaded up our sweatshirts by making a little sack turning up the bottom part. We were all weighed down with rotten vegetables, but still managed to hop back over the fence. We made it into the ditch, and Huge Gene was playing commando, like John Wayne in the war movies. He was lying down on his side, peering over the top ditch and giving us hand motions like, "Move here, come on, follow me." As we started to move out of the ditch, commando style, Russ announced he had to take a leak. Gene, Brad, Mike C., and I looked back at Russ, who had climbed back up to the fence post to do his business. "Come on, hurry up," Huge Gene whispered. Russ got to the post, unzipped with his free hand. The other was holding on to his sweatshirt full of ammo. He let loose. The stream of urine hit that bottom wire. A little bolt of lightning started at the wire and ran up the urine to his you-know-what. Russ screamed in agony. He had pissed on an electric fence wire. It was one of the most bizarre events to witness in my life. He was hopping up and down, holding his thing and screaming, oh my God, I'm electrocuted and I'm going to die." Back in a minute. Thank you. We started at the Tidwell's house and worked our way down my side of the street, then up the other side. Thank you. Being Russ's good friends, we immediately ran for cover, leaving Russ to scream in agony on his own. We ran to the yards between 3rd and 2nd Street and hid behind a woodpile. All the lights in the houses started to turn on with all of Russ's yelling. We were whisper yelling at him to shut up, to no avail. Russ came out of his shock, realizing he was alone, and started yelling at us. "You gutless bastards, leaving me like this. Where are you?" He eventually calmed down and started running through the ditch and made his way down to the street light at the end of our street. There he stood, muddy, electrocuted, and no ammo left. He dumped it all while hopping up and down and then running. Huge Gene didn't want the night to end without any action, so he took off running right down the middle of 3rd Street. He stopped in front of the Donlins' house and heaved a bunch of his ammo at the Donlins. Who knows if he hit anything or not? We all dropped our ammo and ran for 3rd Street, with Huge Gene running toward us. We met up with Gene and thought it would be safer to hide in the ditch, so we dove back in the ditch and made our way to Russ. There we stood under the 4th Street lamp where we started, accomplishing nothing, muddy, smelling like rotten vegetables, and it was now 7:30. So much for our first cabbage night. Halloween, our big night, was finally here. Huge Gene had decided a long time ago that he was going to be Evel Knievel. He had on one of his father's white painter's coverall suit things. Mr. Tidwell painted houses on the weekends for extra money. On the white painter's clothes, he painted red and blue stars and stripes to look like Evel's getup. He wore his old football helmet painted white with blue stars on it. He tried to take off the helmet's crossbar, but couldn't get it off. But all in all, a good costume. At least with Huge Gene's costume, given some time, you could probably guess who he was. Brad, being in the bicentennial mood, was going as Benjamin Franklin. He had on one of his mother's old wigs, pulled back in some kind of a ponytail. On top of the wig, he had an old coonskin cap he got the last time he went to Frontier Town. On his face, he was wearing the fake gold wire glasses that he had borrowed from my sister's Mrs. Beasley doll. He was wearing a plain, white, button-down shirt and had on some kind of a vest-looking thing. He was wearing blue jeans and a big belt with a shiny gold belt buckle on it. For shoes, he wore sneakers with belt buckles tied into the laces. Brad thought he was the spitting likeness of old Ben Franklin. If he hadn't told me who he was, I would have never guessed. Mike C. was Dracula. He looked the part, too. He was done up right. He had the long black cape, the white shirt, the black pants and coat, the red tie, and of course the fake teeth. His sisters, Anna and Brenda, had slicked back his hair with some kind of gel stuff. Hands down, he was Dracula, or at least a short, pudgy Italian version of Dracula. Russ was your standard baseball player. He wore a Red Sox shirt and cap and tucked his pants into his tube socks for the uniform look. And of course, he had his baseball glove on. I was Elvis Presley. To me, Elvis was still cool. It took a long time for news to reach me that he was, in fact, old news. How was I to know? His songs were always on the radio, at least the AM channels my dad listened to. His movies were always on TV, Clam Bake, Roustabout, Blue Hawaii, Girls, Girls, Girls. He would sing, play the guitar, and get the girl. What was cooler than that? I was completely oblivious to the fact that in 1975, Elvis had been replaced by the likes of Tony Orlando and Don and the Captain and Tennille. For me, it was Elvis. I wore a fringed jean jacket with cardboard stars covered in tinfoil pinned to it. My mom wrote Elvis on the front of my jacket, and she slicked my hair back like Mike C's. I carried my guitar around my neck. In my mind, I was as cool as Elvis. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. We started at the Tidwells' house and worked our way down my side of the street, then up the other side. Lee Harvey's mom actually guessed Brad's costume correctly. "Why aren't you a cute little Benjamin Franklin?" she asked. Brad was now blushing under the fake gold wire Mrs. Beasley glasses. Of course, I can't be too sure how good of a costume guesser she was. She also guessed Russ was a football player. She got Mike C. as Dracula. She told me I was one of those nasty rock and rollers. And as for Huge Gene, she guessed he was a painter. She also instructed us to wait up for Lee Harvey. He was supposed to go with his dad, but wanted to really go with us. So she was letting him. We waited in Lee's driveway for him. He came out looking like a little version of Mike C.'s Dracula. Mike C. was hating it. But what are you going to do? The rest of the houses thought Lee Harvey was Mike C.'s little brother. The only real difference in the look was that Lee was way shorter than Mike C., and Lee was wearing his big black glasses. We managed to get done with the 4th Street and started working our way up to Cobar Road to 3rd Street. We were focused on getting to as many houses as we could before our 9 o'clock curfew. We also had to keep an eye open for any possible mischief from the 3rd Streeters. They would love nothing more than to ruin our Halloween. As we came onto 3rd Street, we were extra diligent, especially as we got to the Donlands' house. This was the heart of enemy territory. I half expected the door to be answered by Mrs. Donlan dressed in an army uniform, pointing a machine gun at us, then ordering us to lie on the ground and hand her our Halloween candy. But instead, when we rang the doorbell, Mrs. Donlan smiled at us and said, "What cute costumes you all have, son." Looking at Brad Brent Franklin, she said, "Who are you supposed to be?" Wait, I got it. You're Davy Crockett, right? That's what the coonskin cap is for. I love guessing the costumes. Brad just nodded his head at her, not bothering to explain who he was. This was about the 400th time this evening Brad had been identified as Davy Crockett. We were also stunned that the Donlans gave us good candy. I was expecting a piece of old rotten fruit, but I got 2 pieces of Bazooka Joe bubblegum. We finished up with 3rd Street, still keeping a lookout for the 3rd Streeters. They could be ready to ambush us at any second. There was still a ton of rotten fruits and vegetables over in the patch. We got back out on Cobar Road and started heading towards 2nd Street. Then we spotted them. The ugly, smelly, rotten 3rd Streeters, heading straight towards us. Huge Gene motioned for us to be cool. They probably just wanted to trick or treat like we did. They did not want any trouble either, we said to ourselves. We were heading right towards them and them towards us. We walked past each other's groups in total silence. Not a word was spoken. They kept going, and we kept going. We both wanted no trouble. We just wanted to get our candy. We watched them for a little bit, and we continued up towards 2nd Street, and they continued down towards 3rd Street. They went out of our sight, and we figured, good riddance. We finished up on 2nd Street, and we were done. The moms were only letting us do 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Streets, figuring that was enough candy and about as far away as they trusted us. We came off 2nd Street and headed back down Cobar Road. Mike C. was chomping away on a Charleston Chew candy bar, and I was working on a Baby Ruth. Splat, 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 splat. We were suddenly pelted with rotten tomatoes. The 3rd Streeters had ambushed us from the mayor's side of Cobar Road. They had all the ammo. We were defenseless. No ditch to hide in, no ammo to throw. We were just getting pelted. We started to run, of course, and they stayed with us by running in the ditch on the side of the road, following us down and pelting us some more. On the second wave, Dracula caught a rotten tomato right on his fake teeth. My Elvis jacket lost a few of its cardboard stars. Huge Gene's white football helmet was now painted red with the guts of rotten tomatoes. Big Russ ran ahead and started cutting through the backyards between 3rd and 4th Street. We followed him in and found ourselves lying on the ground, catching our breath behind the Tidwell's garden. Huge Gene telling us to keep quiet or his mom would hear us, and that would be it for tonight. Huge Gene wanted revenge tonight. Mrs. Tidwell kept a pretty clean garden, so it wasn't like there was a bunch of old vegetables lying around, but there was a big crabapple tree there. So we loaded up on small crabapples. These looked like regular apples, only real small, maybe 1 inch or so thick, and for some reason we could not eat them. Let me tell you one thing. When you were hit with a crabapple being chucked at you, you knew it. These things hurt. I mean, hurt bad. Like being hit with rocks. Huge Gene had his helmet full of them. Mike C. loaded up in his cape. I stuffed up my pockets with them. Brad filled up his coonskin cap. Russ, in the meantime, had grabbed up some ammo and was out on the recon trying to locate the Third Streeters. He came back and said, "They're down at the Donlins, hanging out under the back deck." "Perfect," said Huge Gene. We all threw our candy sacks under the crabapple tree and started to follow Huge Gene. Huge Gene was going down on the ground in his John Wayne commando-style routine. So we followed, running short sprints from behind woodsheds to behind trees to behind bushes until we could see them only a few dozen yards away. They were there, hanging out on Donlin's picnic table, laughing it up. I could hear Bobby bragging about hitting Dracula right in the face. Chris Fartwell was holding up one of my Elvis stars like a trophy. This mockery was about to end. Huge Gene wanted them bad. Heck, we all did. The decision was made to come at them from all three sides. The backside where the Donlands' house was to be their only escape route. "Run into your house like scared little mice," Huge Gene Whisper yelled at us. Gene and Brad would go around to the left side to come at them. Mike C. and Russ would go around the right side of the yard and come at them. I was to go right up the middle. The signal to attack would be given by Mike C. He'd whistle real loud. He was picked for this because he had the best whistle, by far. He would put two fingers in his mouth and blow, and boy, it was loud. The idea was to pelt them so hard and so fast with so many apples that they had no choice but to run inside. Victory was to be ours. Before the signal was given, we needed to be in position. Position just meant getting ready to run and fire without being seen by the enemy. I'd managed to commando crawl to about 40 feet or so from the Third Streeters. I was under a small bush waiting for the whistle, trying to see the other guys. The whistle blew. I jumped up and ran at the bastards, screaming for all I was worth, firing my crab apples as fast and as hard as I could. In the melee that ensued, I saw Mike and Russ coming at them, firing and screaming. Gene and Brad came in from the other side, firing and screaming. In slow motion, I watched us seek our revenge. Crab apples flying, Third Streeters hitting the ground. It was beautiful for about 30 seconds. The last thing I saw was my crabapple heading straight towards the light bulb that was hanging from under the deck and lighting up the Donlands' backyard. My apple was going right at it. I saw it hit, then pop, bang, crash. It was suddenly pitch dark. The Third Streeters were screaming. We were yelling. I heard Huge Gene yelling out, "Scramble, scramble, code red, code red." Gene, I guess, had heard this in some war movie, that if you got in the heat of battle and lost your way, you yelled out, "Scramble, code red." And that was a signal for us to make our way to home base. The problem was, where's home base tonight? We always change where it is. I wanted my candy and guitar back, so I headed to the bushes where we all put the candy. Turns out the other guys did too. Gene showed up with Brad. Mike C. made his way in. Russ was nowhere to be seen. We all started looking around for him. Whisper yelling, "Russ, not funny. Where are you?" We waited around some more, and then Brad said it was 9 o'clock and we better get to his house for pizza, or there would be trouble. So like good old loyal friends of Russ, we left the bushes and headed to Gene's house for pizza without Russ. The guys were giving me high praise for the light bulb shot. We got to Gene and Brad's house, and there was Russ. He had ended up running all the way down to the end of the street and came up from the sand pit. Good thing we grabbed his candy for him. And that's Chapter 13, Halloween, from the book My Bicentennial Year, about the family from Thank you. Who is the socialist? He is the man that is spiritual. He's the man that seeks consensus. He's subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He is informal and terminally unique. He is childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to tune in to the John and Ken Show, which is an excellent example of how true conservatives communicate. It's a radio show that's on KFI AM 640 from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Friday. And that's Pacific time. So that's an excellent show to listen to. And other than that, until next time, remember to be honest, to be smart, to be beautiful, and to remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.